Congratulations, you've made it to the Star Wars galaxy. You're just a random guy. Maybe you work in a droid repair shop, or maybe you serve CAF to bounty hunters who never tip. Either way, this is your life now, and it's about to get weird, depressing, and occasionally on fire. In this video, we're going to visit every major Star Wars planet and show you exactly what your day-to-day life would look like. So grab a snack and get comfortable. Also let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. And if you enjoy slow journeys through strange history, feel free to subscribe. Now, let's begin. Coruscant, the shining center of the galaxy, capital of the Republic, and later the Empire. Billions of beings stacked across thousands of levels. If you've ever looked at a map of the galaxy and noticed how Coruscant is labeled as 00, that's not by accident. That's because everything else is measured in relation to it. Long before hyperspace lanes were carved and the Republic even existed, Coruscant was already building upward. It's one of the oldest urban centers in galactic history. So old that no one actually remembers what it originally looked like. Grass, oceans, trees. If it had those, they're gone. Paved over thousands of years ago, layer by layer, structure by structure, it became something else. Not a city on a planet, but a city instead of a planet. Today, Coruscant is what you'd call an ecumenopolis, a world entirely covered by urban sprawl. The entire surface, and everything above it for miles, is a mess of durasteel, transparasteel, megastructures, highways, habitation blocks, and towers so tall they scrape space. A literal planet of skyscrapers. What people call Coruscant isn't one single level. It's a vertical stack of civilization that goes from stratosphere to crust, with people living, working, and existing all the way down. The actual number of levels is debated. Officially, it's somewhere around 5,000 levels, but in reality, it's more like 30,000 when you count all the unofficial sectors, black market blocks, old foundations, and forgotten ruins buried beneath the visible city. At some point, it stopped being trackable. The uppermost layers, starting around level 5,000 and up, are home to the elites. High-rise penthouses, political towers, pristine government facilities, high-end shopping districts, and skyhook ports that connect directly to orbit. You can live your whole life up there and never touch real ground. Not that there's any ground left to touch. It's bright, busy, and cleaner than the rest, but still artificial. Even the sunlight is filtered through atmospheric regulators. Below that, you've got the mid-levels, where most of the city's population lives. This is the working-class Coruscant, if you can call it that. These levels are a labyrinth of transport lines, industrial blocks, mass housing, food stalls, repair shops, clubs, diners, and a million different ways to make a living. It's always noisy, always moving. Think of it as the galaxy's eternal rush hour. The lights never go out, and the elevators never stop. Then there are the lower levels, the ones no one wants to talk about. Down there, light barely reaches. Atmosphere processors struggle to keep up. Crime runs unchecked. Maintenance is sporadic, at best. Gangs run the show. Some areas are patrolled by rogue droids from some forgotten security system. People call it the Undercity, the Underscape, the deep levels, but whatever the name, it's not a place most people survive long. Yet somehow, people still live there. Some even call it home. And finally, deep beneath all of it, miles below what anyone considers normal, is the works. That's where Coruscant's oldest infrastructure lives. It was once the planet's heart of industry. Massive power cores, energy relays, fusion reactors, waste treatment systems, atmospheric scrubbers. It still keeps the city running, even if no one pays it much attention. The Jedi believed something dark had nested there, and maybe they weren't wrong. It's been a place of cults, conspiracies, and secrets for generations. The further you go down, the older and stranger things get. Speaking of the Jedi, Coruscant was also their home for thousands of years. The Jedi Temple, perched on one of the city's highest points, used to shine like a beacon. Visible from miles around, it was both a religious monument and a political tool. The Jedi weren't warriors or mystics. On Coruscant, they were part of the system. Advisors, generals, peacekeepers, always involved in government affairs, whether they admitted it or not. And then there's the Senate. The Galactic Senate Dome is one of the most recognizable buildings in the galaxy, a place where trillions of beings are supposedly represented by thousands of delegates and senators. It's a political circus. Deals are made, wars are justified, empires rise and fall, all within those polished walls. To live on Coruscant is to live under its shadow, even if you never set foot inside. But Coruscant isn't all government and ancient history. It's a place where culture explodes in every direction. Street musicians on level 5212 play rhythms from the Outer Rim. Restaurants on level 4911 serve Mon Calamari dishes next to Togrutan spice cafes. Hollow cinemas on level 5603 show dramas in Wookiee, Twi'leki, and Basic, all in the same block. You can walk 5 meters and hear 10 different languages. You can taste food from across the galaxy without ever boarding a ship. It's beautiful, chaotic, and always one step from total collapse. And yet it works, somehow. The bureaucracy is endless, the systems are outdated, but it all keeps going. Trillions of people, hundreds of species, living in layers stacked on top of each other. You'll never meet most of them. You might not even visit more than a few sectors in your lifetime. But that's Coruscant, a planet so dense, so old, and so busy that no one can see the full picture, not even the people who run it. So when someone says they're from Coruscant, it doesn't mean much without context. From where? What level? What sector? Who raised you? What species? What kind of Coruscant are we talking about? Because this planet has a million faces. Some glitter, some rot, some disappear entirely. And your story, the version you're about to hear, is just one of them. Your apartment is on level 5124. That's what they call mid-tier living. Not low enough to smell the garbage fires, not high enough to get a whiff of clean air. No windows, balconies or sunrise. The walls hum all the time, probably from the power grid or one of the 50 transport tubes running just behind them. You've stopped noticing it, kind of like the smell of roasted Nuna legs and exhaust fumes that drifts in from the street vents. There's no walking across town. On Coruscant, you go up or down. Most of the ground you stand on isn't the planet's crust. You're standing on someone else's roof. Maybe a 5,000-year-old building buried beneath 1,000 layers of new construction. The actual surface of Coruscant, that's somewhere far, far below. No one goes there. Rumors say it's haunted, cursed, or worse, still radioactive from some ancient war. More realistically, it's just been forgotten, and people don't like thinking about things that can't make credits. In the mid-levels, everything is crowded. You live shoulder to shoulder with people from a dozen species. Your neighbour is a Trandoshan who runs a repair shop out of his kitchen. Across the hall, there's a Rhodian couple who have 9 kids and 0 volume control. The walls are thin, but hey, at least they're not shooting at you. Not this week anyway. You take a lift pod to work. It's slow and always full. Once you got stuck between floors for 2 hours with a drunk Gotal who wouldn't stop talking about his ex-wife. The transit system is supposed to be efficient, but it's built on layers of layers. Old tunnels, newer rails, sky trams, express tubes, repulsor lifts, all stacked like a sandwich made by someone who forgot they already added cheese. There's no logic, just routes that kind of work most of the time. If a train breaks down 2 levels above you, your whole day is ruined. Work? Depends on your sector. You might do maintenance for upper-level sewage systems. Glamorous. Or sort freight containers for some small-time droid parts supplier. Or maybe you serve CAF at a place called Dex's, but way less charming. Either way, you work long hours, and your shift is dictated by station clocks instead of natural daylight. Time doesn't feel real down here. It's just numbers on a screen. There's always light, though. Coruscant never gets dark. Even down in the mid-levels, there's artificial sky glow. Giant holograms, flashing billboards, neon signs that try to mimic stars but end up looking more like static. Your ceiling might be painted blue and set to a 12-hour rotation, so it looks like day, then night. It's not fooling anyone, but it helps you sleep, kind of. Everything here is artificial, even the weather. Some levels pay for atmosphere control, simulated breezes, filtered air, sometimes even fake rain. It sounds nice until it breaks, and you're breathing in weeks-old coolant vapor. One time, the air system in your sector glitched and made it snow for 3 days straight. No one had coats. The local kids thought it was fun. Everyone else was late for work. You eat what you can afford. That usually means street food. Fried bug skewers, mystery meat on a stick, or those plasticky noodles with spice that numbs your tongue. Calf comes in disposable cubes. You pop one in your mouth, drink water, and try not to gag. Entertainment? There's plenty, but most of it's sketchy. Illegal pod racing streams, pirate holonet broadcasts, those late-night shows where a Gamorrean tells jokes in 6 languages. Or you go to a vibro club on level 5132, where the music makes your chest rattle and someone inevitably throws up on your boots. You don't go for the experience. You go because it's better than sitting alone, listening to the hum of the walls. Some people dream of moving up, literally, getting a better job, maybe scoring an apartment above level 6000, where the windows actually open and the light isn't entirely artificial. You hear stories, some guy who fixed a senator's speeder and got hired as a private mechanic, or a girl who won big at a sabak table and bought herself into a new identity. But those are stories. Most people stay where they are. The ladder exists, sure, it just doesn't have many rungs. The police? Depends which level you're on. Some blocks have patrol droids, others, nothing at all. There's sector security, but they usually just show up after the fact. If you get mugged, they might log it, but they're not hunting anyone down. People take care of themselves. Neighborhood watch, old clones running private security gigs, local gangs who keep the peace in their own weird way. It's a messy system, but it kind of works. Until it doesn't. And then there's the politics. You live in the shadow of the Senate, but it feels like another planet. Speeches about freedom and unity mean very little when your trash chute backs up for the 3rd week in a row. There's always someone campaigning for something, handing out flyers, shouting about justice. But justice doesn't pay rent. And if it doesn't pay rent, it doesn't matter. Still, Coruscant has a rhythm. Once you learn it, you stop fighting it. That was the mid-levels. What if we go even deeper now? You hear the phrase lower levels a lot on Coruscant, but most people don't really understand what it means. It's a different world. Once you drop below a certain point, maybe level 5000, maybe lower depending on the sector, things start to change. The lights dim, the air gets heavier, and the crowds get quiet. You're still in the same city technically, but it stops feeling like Coruscant. Down here, there's no sunlight, just flickering signs and whatever glow leaks down from the upper floors. The air smells like oil, rust, and old coolant. Everything's damp. You can't tell if it's from leaking pipes or just humidity trapped in concrete for 100 years. Sometimes the mist is so thick you can't see more than a few meters ahead. It's not even fog, it's just recycled moisture that never went anywhere. People live here, but not in a way you'd call comfortable. Some have carved out spaces in abandoned tunnels, sealed off maintenance shafts, old storage units. There are entire blocks that used to be retail districts, back in the Republic days, now turned into makeshift housing. Families live in places that were once server rooms, food courts, old banks. Doors are welded shut or chained up, power lines run across the ceiling like tangled vines, and plumbing is more of a suggestion than a system. There's no real law enforcement down here. The official security presence stops well above this zone. You'll see the occasional surveillance droid drifting by, but no one's watching the footage. Instead, people rely on their own systems. Local groups, informal bosses, even gangs acting like city council. If something happens to you, it's your problem. You either solve it yourself or hope someone you know is willing to help. People carry knives, blasters, shock sticks, not to start fights, just to make it home at night. There are stores, if you know where to look. Little stands tucked into corners, selling fried mystery meat, spare speeder parts, hacked data pads, and things you probably shouldn't ask too many questions about. Credits still work, but favors are just as valuable. If you help someone out, they remember. Down here, reputation is currency. If you're known, you're safer. If you're not, you're a target. You get used to the noise, pipes clanking, droids skittering through old ducts. Music from a block party, 3 levels over, screams sometimes. You learn not to react to every sound, just the ones that get too close. At night, the silence is worse. It's never really quiet, but there are long stretches where you realize just how far you are from anyone who might help. There's a lot of superstition down here too. Not all of it is nonsense. People talk about things lurking in the shadows, old droids gone rogue, mutated animals, even force-sensitive cults that meet in ancient tunnels. Some parts of the lower levels have become their own little cities. Same buildings, same layout, just abandoned and repurposed. Someone turns an old tram station into a nightclub. Another group opens a school inside a forgotten Republic barracks. It's not luxury, but it's functional. You make it work. You don't wait for the upper levels to notice you exist. You just build your life out of whatever's left. Power is unreliable. You might have energy one day, nothing the next. People jury-rig their own grid systems, run cables for miles, tap into forgotten junction boxes. Same with water. You carry it, or you know someone who's figured out a way to filter it from old condensation units. People get creative. They have to. Coruscant's infrastructure wasn't built to last this long, and the deeper you go, the more it shows. Sometimes you'll see visitors from the surface, tourists, journalists, thrill seekers. They come down, take a few pictures, buy something weird, and head back up like they just did a safari. They don't stay. Living down here is survival. If you're here long enough, you stop noticing how broken everything is. You just learn how to move through it without drawing attention. And the crazy part? Some people choose to live here because they want to disappear. No IDs, data trails, or official record. You can be anyone down here, or no one. A slicer running from bounty hunters, a failed politician hiding from scandal, a clone who didn't want to fight anymore. The lower levels absorb everyone, eventually, and still, somehow, there's life. Living at the top of Coruscant is a strange kind of luxury. From up here, the planet doesn't even look like a planet. It's a blur of silver and gold towers rising endlessly into the atmosphere, glowing with artificial light and blinking beacons. The streets are gone, replaced by sky bridges, private landing pads, and traffic lanes exclusive to the wealthy. And if you're lucky or powerful enough, you get to call one of these places home. Your apartment? It's not even called that anymore. It's a sky suite. Wide transparent steel windows from floor to ceiling, climate-controlled airflow, a view that stretches for kilometers if the air is clear. On good days you can see the spires of the Jedi Temple ruins or the domes of the Senate complex. On bad days the pollution haze turns everything into soup and the artificial sunlight gets turned up a notch to compensate. But you never smell the underlevels. That's filtered out. Even the noise is removed. There are sound dampening shields in the walls, just in case the city below dares to remind you it exists. The lobby has a concierge droid who speaks 17 languages and judges you silently. Security? Top-notch. Retinal scanners, coded elevators, private guards, sometimes retired clone troopers hired by corporate executives. There's a pool on the roof, a spa 2 levels below, and a restaurant that charges extra just to sit near the window. You never see the maintenance crews. They come in through side corridors, do their work at night, and vanish before morning. The illusion is part of the price. People here don't just have wealth, they have status. Old money from core world dynasties, corporate giants who own starship fleets, senators who chair half the Republic's committees. Their children attend private academies on orbiting platforms. Their partners throw charity balls inside floating galleries. Even the droids have brand names. You don't see protocol units up here. You see custom models designed by luxury manufacturers that no one outside Coruscant's elite has ever heard of. And yet, for all the shine, there's something off. Something detached. You're surrounded by wealth but completely removed from reality. People here don't take public transit. They use private speeders. They don't shop in markets. They send droids with shopping lists. Most haven't been below level 5,000 in decades, if ever. They talk about the lower districts like they're another planet entirely. Sometimes they fund relief programs, throw money at non-profits, or sponsor art installations meant to capture the urban struggle. But they've never walked through it. They've never smelled it. Politics is part of everyday life up here. You can't throw a stone without hitting someone who works for the Senate, lobbies the Senate, or thinks they should be in the Senate. The Senate district is just across the Skyway. And even if you don't care about policy, you care about appearances. Networking happens everywhere. On balconies, in hover lounges, at invitation-only brunches, hosted by people with names like Vrina of House Tabos, or Tharngelic of Centax Holdings. Everything is image. How you dress, how you speak, who you associate with. Even your droid's model says something about you. Want to seem environmentally conscious? You buy recycled core servitors. Want to show you're culturally progressive? You host an off-world chef for a limited series tasting event. There are rules here, but they're not written down. They're social codes layered thicker than the city itself. Still, not everyone up here is born into it. Some people climbed, executives from the mid-levels who made the right business deal. former generals who cashed in on post-war contracts, even a few outer rim figures with enough credits to buy themselves into high society. They're tolerated, usually with a smile and a behind-the-back comment about how new money smells like freighter grease. And despite all the distance, there's always this quiet knowledge that you're still standing on top of other people's lives. Your penthouse rests on levels filled with workers, service staff, transit routes, mechanical cores. You might be hundreds of floors up, but your breakfast still came from someone running a night shift in a distribution tunnel 2,000 levels below. The walls are thick, but the connection is there, uncomfortable and ignored. You can fly anywhere from up here. Dock your speeder at a private hangar, charter a shuttle to Chandrila, Naboo, or wherever your financial advisor thinks is safe this season. But most people stay close. There's too much to manage. Investments, meetings, social obligations. Luxury becomes a job. Status becomes a full-time performance. And the truth is, a lot of people at the top feel trapped. Not financially. They're set for life. But personally, emotionally. You hear it in their conversations at galas, in the pauses between business deals. They're surrounded by thousands of people, but isolated by wealth, by security systems, by the fear of losing position. You can't relax when everyone's watching, judging, waiting for your next move. Some even look down at the city below, not in disgust but in curiosity, wondering what it's like to just walk outside without a schedule, to eat something from a street cart, to talk to someone who doesn't know your name or care about your portfolio. They won't go, of course, that would be reckless. But sometimes, when the transparasteel windows dim for the evening and the artificial light sets in, you wonder if they miss something they never had. Even the skyline up here is built on history. The Senate building, once the hub of galactic democracy, now hosts meetings that feel more like theatre. Deals are made long before anyone takes the podium. Speeches are for the holonet. Real power happens in back rooms, encrypted messages, quiet favours traded for louder ones. It's not corruption exactly, just tradition. And that's the top of Coruscant. It's not paradise, it's polished, quiet, distant. The noise of the city doesn't reach this high, but the pressure never leaves. Every window you look out of shows you a billion lights blinking beneath you. Every step you take is supported by 1,000 others you'll never meet. You live above them, but you're not free from them. You're just one more part of the machine, only at the top of the stack. All right, that was long enough. Now let's move to Tatooine. You've heard the name. Even if you've never set foot here, it probably popped up in some cheap Spacer's cantina story. It's one of those places that sounds made up, like no real planet could be this bad and still function. And yet somehow, it does. Barely. The first thing that hits you isn't the sand, it's the heat. 2 suns hang in the sky like twin blowtorches, burning down on the endless stretches of beige nothingness. There's no real shade on Tatooine. If you're lucky, you find a slab of rock to cower under, while your clothes stick to your back and your mouth goes dry before breakfast. The moment you step outside, your boots start to heat up like frying pans. There's no such thing as walking barefoot unless you're a Jawa, and even they smell like they've made peace with being slowly cooked alive. The terrain doesn't help either. It's not just dunes, it's jagged canyons, buried sinkholes, and sun-bleached rock formations that look like they're plotting your death. Crate dragons roam out there too. You might never see one, but you'll definitely hear stories. Their bones litter parts of the dune sea like fossilized warnings. Sandstorms are another gift from this place, the kind that rolls in without warning, tears apart whatever shelter you've got, and leaves you chewing dust for a week. Then there are the Tusken Raiders. The locals call them sand people. They don't live in cities, don't trade, and definitely don't like strangers. If you're out beyond the safety of town and hear that eerie howling sound, that's them. And it's already too late to do much about it. They move in nomadic tribes and hit hard, often just for territory or vengeance. Nobody really understands them, and nobody's been foolish enough to try for long. Most people on Tatooine don't live in cities. They survive in moisture farms, small domed settlements scattered across the wasteland. Moisture farming sounds like a joke until you realise it's the difference between life and death. Special machines called vaporators suck whatever trace humidity exists out of the air and collect it drop by drop. It's not glamorous, you're not going to get rich, but it's the only reason most people don't dry up and blow away. Families live in small sunken homesteads to keep the heat out and they don't go outside more than they have to. Even then, you'll see them draped in layers of rough fabric, trying to block out the suns like walking tents. The more urban areas of Tatooine, and we're using that term loosely, are places like Mos Eisley, Mos Espa, and Anchorhead. They're not exactly cities as much as they are clusters of bars, hangars, broken down droids, and bad decisions. Mos Eisley is the most infamous, a spaceport that somehow operates under the radar of any real government. You'll find every type of traveller here: smugglers, bounty hunters, grifters, spice runners, and the occasional runaway Jedi trying not to look like one. Law enforcement? Hilarious. The only real authority is whatever gang has the most muscle this month. Speaking of which, let's talk about the Hutts. Specifically, the Hutt cartel. Tatooine doesn't have a senator, it has a slug in a palace. For years, Jabba the Hutt ran everything from pod racing to spice shipments to local dispute resolution. Even after his death, the vacuum he left behind was filled with just as many slimy successors. If you're doing business on Tatooine, whether it's legal, illegal, or somewhere in between, you're paying tribute to someone who oozes across a marble floor and speaks in third person. And yes, there is an economy, somehow. It's a mix of scrap dealing, droid repairs, under-the-table imports, and hope. Jawas scour the desert in massive sand crawlers, looking for anything broken enough to sell back to the people it was stolen from. Mechanics run shady garages that might fix your speeder or might just strip it for parts. You learn pretty quick not to trust a price tag here. There's no standard rate for anything. The cost of water goes up during a sandstorm. A clean pair of goggles might cost more than your house if there's a crate dragon spotted nearby. Even your own time has no value unless someone richer can use it. Food? You eat what's available. Root stew, boiled dewback, roasted, womp rat if someone's feeling fancy. Blue milk is the local pride, and nobody really knows where it comes from anymore. If it's in a cup and not moving, you drink it and don't ask questions. And yet people stay. They build homes, raise families, and plant vaporators like hopeful flags in the dirt. Some grew up here and don't know anything else. Some came here trying to disappear. Others just didn't have the credits to go anywhere better. And some, the real dreamers, think they can make a name for themselves in this mess, whether it's racing pods in the Boonta Eve Classic or scoring a payday big enough to buy a ticket off-world. But Tatooine doesn't let go easy. The planet has a way of grabbing you by the boots and dragging you back into the sand. Doesn't matter if you're a Jedi, a smuggler, or just some kid staring at the horizon. Eventually, the suns burn away your plans, and you find yourself doing what everyone else does, surviving the day and hoping tomorrow doesn't kill you. You live in Anchorhead, or maybe Mos Espa. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. Every town on Tatooine kind of blends together when you're just trying to get by. Dusty streets, crumbling walls, and the endless hum of old droids barely holding themselves together. If you're lucky, your place has a functioning evaporator and a roof that doesn't cave in when the heat hits peak. If you're not lucky, well, you've already learned to live without luck out here. Your day starts early, because there's just no real reason to stay in bed when your room heats up like an oven the moment the suns rise. You open your eyes to a stale ceiling, roll off a stiff sleeping mat, and shake out your boots in case something crawled in during the night. Then it's outside into the morning glare, trying not to step in any leaking coolant puddles from the neighbour's broken down speeder. Water is expensive, so most people don't shower. You wipe your face with a dirty cloth soaked in what's hopefully clean moisture runoff. If your evaporator's still working, you might even get a cup of semi-cold water to start the day. It tastes like copper, salt and plastic. It still costs more than it should. There's no such thing as a dream job here. You're probably running parts between busted droids at Watto's old shop, or sorting scrap under some grumpy Rhodian who pays in food rations and half-lies. Maybe you fix speeder bikes that haven't moved in years, or sweep out cantina floors after spice heads pass out. If you're on the edge of town, maybe you're one of the people hauling garbage from failed farms to moisture condenser hubs. It's endless, thankless work that leaves your hands dry and your back aching. And the worst part? You're not even the poorest one in town. The people around you, well, they're just trying to survive too. Everyone's got a hustle, a scam, or a secret. The old guy next door swears he fought during the Clone Wars. He probably didn't. The Twi'lek who sells repurposed ship parts out of crates behind her building. Most of it is stolen, but no one asks questions if it works. Down at the local tavern, You'll meet everyone from wandering bounty hunters to exhausted freighter pilots who made one too many stops on the wrong side of Hutt-controlled space. Nobody trusts anyone, but somehow everyone still needs each other. That's the rhythm here. Unspoken cooperation built on mutual discomfort. Anchorhead and Mos Espa both pretend to be more organised than they really are. They've got local government, which usually just means a few sentients pretending to enforce rules until someone with credits, muscle, or a connection to Jabba walks in. When that happens, the law politely steps aside. The Hutts don't own everything, but they might as well. Want to open a shop? You'll pay someone. Want to sell water? You'll pay someone. Want to breathe without problems? You'll still pay someone eventually. Shops are small and dusty, mostly selling things people barely want. Used boots, greasy power converters, half-functional translator droids. Food's either shipped in and stale or local and terrible. You eat a lot of root stew, fried worm cakes, and strange ration bars that you try not to read the ingredients on. Meat is rare, fruit is rarer. Actual fresh food? That's for spaceports like Mos Eisley, and only if you've got credits to burn. You don't dress for style out here, you dress to not burn. Light-coloured loose robes, usually hand-me-downs or patched so many times they look like maps. Boots with extra insulation, a head covering if you've got one. The kind of thing that keeps the sand off and the sun out. Doesn't matter what you look like. Nobody's looking anyway. On a good day, maybe someone lets you ride shotgun in a speeder to the edge of the Dune Sea for a scavenging run. You find a few melted droid parts, maybe a half-buried stormtrooper helmet, and if you're lucky, a working datapad someone dropped years ago. You bring it back, trade it for food or a new pair of boots. Then it's back home, rinse your face again, check the evaporator, and hope nothing broke while you were gone. Night doesn't mean it cools off. The desert wind turns sharp and dry, but the heat stays trapped between the walls. You sleep in the same stiff bed, listening to distant noises you don't want to think about. Blaster shots in the hills, Tuscan chants on the wind, the low roar of something too big to see. You wonder if tomorrow might be better. It won't be, but you still wonder. This is life for most people here. You're not a pod racer, not a smuggler, not a hero in hiding. You're just one of thousands of nobodies, with sand in your teeth and cracked hands, hoping your next shift pays enough for a half-decent meal and maybe a used power cell that doesn't explode. But hey, at least it's a living, kind of. Alright, let's pretend for a moment that you've made it. You're not scrubbing droid feet or tuning up broken pod racers anymore. Maybe you hit it big with an off-world deal, maybe you run a legitimate import business, or maybe you've got Hutt connections you don't talk about publicly. Whatever the reason, you're now part of the tiny percentage of people on Tatooine who actually live in comfort, or at least what counts as comfort on a rock like this. You don't live in the middle of Mos Espa or Anchorhead anymore. You've got a compound somewhere on the outskirts, maybe carved into a cliffside or built up with thick adobe walls to keep the heat out, and the curious even farther out. Your walls are smooth, your floors are clean, and you've got things like filtered air and running water that doesn't come from a desperate moisture farm. The first thing that hits you about being wealthy on Tatooine is how much of your day revolves around protecting what you have. You hire guards, usually imported from off-world, some Rhodians, a grumpy Trandoshan or two, maybe even a reprogrammed battle droid with a suspicious paint job. You don't walk through town without a small entourage, not because you're scared, but because it's simply expected. Power here is all about appearance. Your day starts late. Why wake up with the twin suns when you've got thick shutters and cooling units to let you sleep in? Breakfast might be imported, Corellian sweetbread and fresh calf from a well-paid supplier who makes regular hyperspace runs. Everything you consume is imported. Tatooine produces basically nothing. And because the planet is so starved for luxuries, off-world delicacies make you look rich fast. Even something simple, like off-world fruit, carries a high price and an even higher status. Business meetings happen in cantinas or private rooms, often hosted at your place if you really want to show off. Whether you're running trade, smuggling routes, or legitimate freight services, everything on Tatooine runs through someone with money. Most of your deals are made not with datapads and contracts, but with nods, credits exchanged under the table, and vague threats that sound like compliments. Trust is in short supply, but reputation is everything. You might also spend part of your day negotiating with the local Hutt representative. unless you are the local Hutt representative. Even if you're not in their inner circle, you definitely pay tribute, or at least offer favours. Everyone does. Whether it's Jabba or someone else in the Kajidik, you don't stay rich on Tatooine without Hutt approval. You could ignore them for a while, but eventually they'd send someone with too many teeth and too few questions. Social life among the wealthy is oddly limited. There's no glittering high society here, just other rich folks, playing at aristocracy in the dust. You'll occasionally be invited to private gatherings, hushed parties with imported music, off-world alcohol, and small-time celebrities who've either run out of better gigs or are hiding from something. Everyone pretends they're happy to be there. Everyone knows they're not. And even with all the comforts, even with your luxury cooling systems and your private guards and your dinners served on polished Durasteel plates, you still look out your window and see sand. You still hear the rumble of a sandcrawler in the distance or the screams from Mos Eisley at night. You still know there are Krayt dragons out there and that a badly timed sandstorm can swallow your fancy compound just as easily as it can bury a moisture farm. That's the final truth about being rich on Tatooine. No matter how high you climb, you're still on Tatooine. You might have the credits to fly somewhere better, but you're still here. Why? Maybe because this place doesn't ask questions. Maybe because out here, away from the core, you can reinvent yourself without anyone checking your record. You got rich here, you stayed here, and now your whole life is built on sand, in a house that looks strong until the next storm rolls through. But hey, at least your air is cool, your water's clean, and nobody dares question your story. That's worth something. On Tatooine, that's worth everything. If you're lucky enough to find yourself waking up on Naboo, the first thing you'll probably notice is the quiet. Not the kind of silence that comes from desolation, like on Tatooine, but the kind that wraps around you like a soft breeze drifting through tall green grass. The planet is genuinely beautiful. Rolling hills covered in wildflowers, ancient stone bridges arching over rivers so clear they reflect the sky like a mirror, and morning mist curling around the base of marble statues that have stood longer than most galactic governments. This isn't the galaxy's idea of luxury. It's something more peaceful, more human. Two things define Naboo's landscape: its freshwater lakes and its pristine, untouched nature. The planet is dotted with enormous lakes, carved into the terrain by millions of years of natural erosion. Lake Ponga is probably the most famous, but it's just one of many. Some are hidden deep in forests, some lie in open valleys, and some stretch so wide you could mistake them for oceans. Waterfalls are everywhere, not just little streams either, but massive cascades that thunder down the sides of cliffs into deep pools. And Theed, the capital, was deliberately built to flow with that landscape. Its architecture, golden domes, elegant towers, wide stone walkways, all designed to enhance the view, not compete with it. There's no loud industry, no planet-wide cities choking the atmosphere. Most urban areas are compact and respectful of the surrounding land. The people of Naboo treat their environment almost like a spiritual partner, and because of that, everything just feels clean. The air is cool and fragrant in the mornings, the nights are quiet, and even the animals here seem calmer. It's not a perfect place, nowhere is, but it often feels like one, especially if you're just visiting. Now, as pretty as Naboo is above the surface, there's a whole other world below. Beneath the lakes and rivers live the Gungans, an amphibious species native to the planet long before the Nabooans arrived. They built entire cities in the depths, glowing, translucent domes suspended in the water like jellyfish. These aren't primitive people. Their technology is different, organic and fluid, but it works. They have working power systems, defensive shields, weapons and agriculture, all built for underwater life. And while their culture might seem eccentric or clumsy to outsiders, it's structured, proud, and surprisingly political. Relations between the Gungans and the Nabooans have never been simple. For most of their history, they lived completely separate lives, with minimal contact and a lot of mutual resentment. The Nabooans tended to see the Gungans as backward or tribal, and the Gungans saw the Nabooans as arrogant settlers. It wasn't until the events leading up to the Clone Wars, with Queen Amidala and Boss Nass uniting their people against the Trade Federation, that things really began to shift. After that, relations improved slowly. There are still cultural gaps, of course, But by the time of the Galactic Civil War, you'd find Gungans and humans coexisting more than ever before. Not perfectly, but better. Speaking of queens and politics, yes, Naboo is a monarchy, but not the kind where the crown just gets passed through family lines for centuries. Their royalty is elected. Not by the whole population, mind you, but by a council of influential citizens and advisors. The process is formal, ceremonial, and idealistic, with emphasis on beauty, wisdom, and diplomacy. That's how Padme Amidala became queen at just 14. Sounds crazy, but on Naboo, intelligence and dedication carry a lot of weight, even in the young. The queen doesn't rule alone either. There's a legislature, a governor of Theed, and various advisory bodies. The monarchy is more symbolic than absolute, though the queen has significant sway over foreign policy and cultural decisions. Naboo's economy is surprisingly modest. It's not built on manufacturing or shipyards like Corellia. Instead, they lean into art, education, and sustainability. Tourism plays a part. Lots of off-worlders come just to see the lakes, the architecture, or the royal palace. They also export fine goods, paintings, music, handcrafted instruments, and luxury fabrics. And thanks to their neutrality and peaceful image, Naboo is often chosen for political conferences and retreats. There's even a small ship design industry centered in the capital, producing those sleek, silver royal starfighters. Elegant, fast, and impossibly expensive. Day-to-day infrastructure is subtle and efficient. Roads are usually stone or moss-covered paths, rarely paved over with harsh materials. Power comes from hydroelectric systems and geothermal sources. Medical care is widely available, and education is taken seriously. Theed University is known across the Mid-Rim for its philosophy and diplomacy programs. Even in small villages, people have access to clean water, functioning droids, and stable housing. It's not a flashy place, no Coruscant-level nightlife or neon-lit tech districts, but Nabooans like it that way. Of course, there's still a difference between rural and urban life. In the countryside, life moves slower. Farmers grow orchards, harvest herbs, or raise gentle animals like shucks. Families tend the same land for generations, holding local festivals and living in modest stone cottages with wide open porches. In the cities, things are more formal. You'll see long robes, statues, public theatres, and carefully planned gardens. The people are educated, mannered, and often very proud of their cultural identity. But no matter where you go, there's a strong sense of harmony. It's not perfect, but it's one of the few planets in the galaxy where people still talk about beauty without irony. And in a galaxy filled with sand, fire, ice, and war, sometimes a quiet morning by the lake is worth more than all the spice in Kessel. And let's talk about your day-to-day life here. So you're not royalty, you're not a senator, and you don't own a villa by the cliffs or a marble pavilion facing Lake Paunga. But you're doing okay. You've got a clean home made of smooth Naboo stone, a steady job, and a community that actually cares whether you live or die. Compared to most of the galaxy, you're practically thriving. Your house is modest, maybe a few rooms with wide windows and flowering plants climbing the walls. You get a breeze in the evening and real birdsong in the morning. You might have a small garden or a quiet balcony that looks out over a cobblestone street lined with archways and flowering trees. The public infrastructure is solid, with walkable roads, public gardens, functioning sanitation, and a climate that somehow always smells like fresh rain. If you live in Theed, you probably walk to work. The city was built with aesthetics and flow in mind, so there's no ugly construction zones or neon advertising shoved in your face. Instead, you stroll past flowing canals, gentle fountains, and the occasional government building with domed towers. The streets are lined with artisanal cafes and local shops, not galaxy-wide megacorporations. And there are laws, actual laws, against pollution. Naboo cares how it looks. Your job? Maybe you're a public servant, a school teacher, or a civil engineer. Maybe you work in the arts. Naboo actually funds that. Maybe you help design hydromechanical systems, those elegant networks that make the city run on clean energy. Your job isn't glamorous, but it's respected. People here appreciate things like education and sustainability. You're not stepping over corpses to make a paycheck. You get paid enough to live, eat well, and have time off. Healthcare is accessible. Education is free and actually good. People debate philosophy over lunch. Sure, it sounds like a utopia, but that's kind of what Naboo shoots for. People debate philosophy over lunch. Sure, it sounds like a utopia, but that's kind of what Naboo shoots for. You live in a place where civic beauty is a real term, and not just something politicians pretend to care about before elections. You probably have a speeder, but you don't really need it. There's public transit if you're in the city, and even rural areas get good coverage. If you live outside Theed, your home might be nestled into a gentle hillside or beside a winding river, surrounded by fields or forest. Your neighbours are probably quiet but warm, and your biggest complaint might be that the Gungans downstream are noisy during their celebrations. Speaking of Gungans, your relationship with them depends on where you grew up and who you're around. You might even have Gungan co-workers or classmates, but in some older or rural communities, there's still a bit of lingering elitism. Old ideas die slowly, even on a peaceful world, but the treaty signed after the Trade Federation conflicts did shift public sentiment, and joint efforts on ecology and disaster relief have brought the two societies closer. Culturally, you're part of a tradition that values the arts, civic duty, and public dialogue. Politics here aren't something people avoid. They're deeply woven into daily life. You might attend public debates in open courtyards or festivals that celebrate democratic ideals. There's a strong sense that individuals are part of a whole, and that protecting the planet's beauty is a responsibility, not an optional cause. And despite all that civic-minded peace, people still gossip. Your neighbours still whisper about the royal family's outfits, or who's dating who. Markets still overcharge for certain imported fruits. Theed still has rich neighbourhoods with high-end fashion and pretentious cafes. It's not perfect, but the problems are quieter, less existential. You're not worried about war crimes or toxic rain or gang shootouts on your commute. You're mostly worried about whether the street performer outside your building is going to start playing that same three-stringed melody again at 6 a.m. What's interesting, you don't really feel like you're missing out. Sure, you'll hear about wild stories off-world, wars, pirate crews, political coups, but when you look out your window and see the sun rising over golden rooftops and hear the quiet splash of a passing gondola, you're glad you're not involved. You like your small life. You like that your days are predictable. You like that peace isn't just a slogan here, it's a habit. So, you don't have a palace. You don't ride a Varactyl to work. You don't have your name in any holonews headlines. But you live on a planet that works, one that gives a damn about its people, one that's kept its soul intact in a galaxy that seems to lose a piece of itself every time a new war starts. And when the sun sets behind Theed and the lamps flicker on beneath the ivy-covered arches, it's hard to imagine wanting anything more. So you made it to Hoth. Either you lost a very cruel bet, or you're hiding from something so bad that this frozen wasteland actually felt like an upgrade. Either way, welcome to the most inhospitable ice cube in the galaxy. Hoth isn't cold. Cold is what you feel on a brisk day in the upper levels of Coruscant. This place is a different category of misery. You're looking at temperatures that dip below minus 60 degrees Celsius on a good day. With wind chill, it feels more like the planet is personally trying to strip the warmth out of your bones. And there's no sun to give you even the illusion of comfort. Just a pale sky, relentless snow, and storms that can whip up out of nowhere and trap you indoors for days. There's no real city here. No grid, no civilized infrastructure, and no skyline, unless you count jagged ice cliffs and the occasional ridge where a tauntaun might wander past. Most structures on Hoth aren't above ground anyway. They're dug into the snow or built deep inside ice caverns to preserve heat. That heat, by the way, is almost always generated by makeshift generators running on rationed fuel that someone had to smuggle in. Don't expect hot showers or a fully powered home. If you can manage not to freeze solid before breakfast, you're doing better than most. And let's talk about that charming local wildlife. The most famous resident of Hoth is the wampa, a towering carnivorous predator that likes to hang its prey upside down like meat in a butcher's shop. You don't see many wampas unless they want to be seen, which is the worst possible time to spot one. Then you've got tauntauns, technically domesticable, but only if you've got a lot of patience and don't mind the smell. They're your best shot at transportation across the ice fields, unless you enjoy walking into white nothingness for days with no direction. The biggest problem on Hoth isn't even the cold or the monsters, it's the isolation. There are no native civilizations here, no bustling trade routes, no communication relays. The only reason to come here is to disappear. That's why you end up sharing this miserable planet with all sorts of people, fugitives hiding from bounty hunters, exiles banished from more hospitable systems, or those who just want to be left alone forever. You'll find a few makeshift settlements scattered around, mostly former rebel outposts, long since abandoned, or scavenger camps, where supplies are tight and the social skills even tighter. Survival isn't just about staying warm, it's about recycling everything. Water, filtered from melted ice and passed through so many layers of filtration it tastes like metal. Food, freeze-dried emergency rations, and whatever root vegetables someone managed to grow in a heated greenhouse pod. Power, you hope that small reactor core doesn't fail mid-blizzard. No one's coming to fix it. You are the repair team, the cook, the medic, and sometimes the undertaker. And don't even think about calling for help. If your comms go down, you're done. It could be weeks before anyone notices you're gone. And by then, the only thing they'll find is an oddly shaped ice sculpture that used to be you. Despite all of this, a few hardy souls actually make Hoth their home. They don't smile much, and they're not the warmest conversationalists. Pun very much intended, but they figured out the rhythm, a strict routine, a good heat source, and the ability to go weeks without talking to another person. If you're not already slightly broken before coming here, give it a few months. Hoth takes whatever's left of your patience and slowly freezes it solid. So, if you're thinking of moving to Hoth, ask yourself this. Are you okay never feeling your toes again? Can you sleep while a wampa might be tracking your scent through a snowstorm? Do you enjoy the flavour of reheated ration stew eaten in silence? If the answer is yes, then congratulations, you've found your miserable, frozen corner of the galaxy. Now, your life here. You don't really wake up on Hoth, you reboot. The alarm doesn't ring so much as growl, an old battery-powered unit rigged to the wall above your bunk, always vibrating with a hint of static. You blink your eyes open and exhale. Breath curls visibly in the air. The heating unit in your prefab's gone cold again overnight. Great. Your first task of the day will be getting dressed without letting your fingers go numb. There's no luxury here. You sleep in a cramped aluminum box, bolted into the side of a glacial trench. The walls groan under the wind outside. One small heater hums near the door, doing its best to convince you this thing is habitable. Every surface is covered in frost. The door latch sticks with ice. You have a small locker with thermals, a parka, and 2 pairs of gloves, all regulation issue, patched at the elbows and wrists, and still not warm enough. You layer them on like armor and force yourself to open the door. Outside, it's always dim. The light from the planet's distant sun is filtered through storm clouds or bouncing off snow, so white it burns your eyes. You blink into it, then trudge toward the maintenance post. The wind is relentless. Your boots crunch over hard-packed snow as the chill creeps through every seam. It doesn't matter how many layers you're wearing. Your fingers will go stiff by mid-morning. Your lips will crack. And if your mask malfunctions, your nose might just snap off in your hand. You saw it happen once. Work begins before the sun rises. Not that you can tell when that is. You're part of the small team that keeps this entire settlement from freezing solid or suffocating in its sleep. Heat, air, fuel, water. If something breaks, it's your problem. You head to the central tunnel first, where the oxygen recycler always needs attention. One of the intake valves froze overnight, again. You crouch into the access shaft and feel the metal burn your knees through your clothes. Everything on Hoth is makeshift. The generators are salvaged, the cables are repurposed from old ships, and the air vents are bolted into walls that constantly shift under the pressure of snow. You use a hydro spanner like a surgeon's tool. You pray the power doesn't fail mid-repair. You've had friends die from that. The heat cuts out in one wing of the habitat, and by the time you can override the lockdown, it's a morgue. After patching the valve, you're rotated to exterior work. You spend the next few hours reinforcing tunnel supports with plasteel struts, shoveling collapsed snow from a collapsed side corridor, and checking motion sensors that keep an eye out for wampas. Those sensors barely work. They freeze up, glitch out, or get clawed in half. It's mostly just luck. Last week, one of the rookies got dragged out past the ridge by something with white fur and a mouth too wide to belong in this world. They only found his boots. Lunch isn't a break, just a shift in tasks. You chew reheated ration cubes while inspecting fuel lines. They have to run heated coolant non-stop, or they'll solidify. You follow the pipes, inspecting each junction, tapping frozen sections with a mallet to check for brittleness. One crack in the system could mean everyone goes cold by nightfall. No pressure, right? Mid-afternoon, a distress beacon flares up a few kilometers east. Probably a crashed supply skiff or another unlucky scavenger trying to land through a snow squall. You and 2 others load into a speeder, fighting the crosswinds as you skim over the ice plains. The wind howls louder than the engine. The wreckage is half buried. The pilot didn't survive, frozen solid in the cockpit, still gripping the stick. You salvage what you can. Wiring, power cells, nutrient packs, every little bit helps. It's a grim job, but better than letting it go to waste. Back at base, your boots are soaked, your joints ache. You log the salvage haul and update the fuel grid reports. Then you check the water recycler. Someone flushed a thermal glove down the pipe again, and now the whole thing smells like burned rubber and misery. You pull the filter apart with numb hands. By the time your shift ends, you're exhausted. But sleep isn't guaranteed. The storm's picked up again, and the prefab roof rattles like it's ready to collapse. You lie awake listening to it. You think about the other settlements you've heard rumours of. A few dozen kilometres north, maybe, or buried under the southern glaciers. Nobody ever confirms if they're real. Could just be heat-stroke hallucinations. But sometimes people disappear, pack up their things, say they're going to check another site. They don't come back. You've thought about leaving, but where would you go? You don't have enough credits for a ship, and even if you did, who's offering work to some half-frozen maintenance grunt from the edge of nowhere? So you wake up again tomorrow in your frozen metal box and do it all again. Because if you don't, then the whole place freezes over and takes everyone with it. Welcome to life on Hoth. You shovel snow, fix heaters, and keep people alive by sheer stubbornness. There's no reward, no real future, just another storm to survive. It never stops raining on Kamino. From the moment you arrive, you're soaked. Cold salt water clings to your uniform, seeps into your boots, and crawls down your spine. The skies are a dull, bruised grey, barely distinguishable from the endless ocean below. And above you, those impossibly tall spires of Tipoca City rise like glass needles, stabbed into the sea. You live in one of those towers now. It floats, technically, but it doesn't feel like it. The walls are thick and sterile white, humming with the low pulse of power and climate control. Nothing has colour here. Everything's white or pale blue or chrome. Even the people are muted. Kaminoans, tall, slow-speaking, slow-blinking, polite to the point of being unsettling, glide through the corridors like they're underwater. You never really get used to them. They never blink quite right. There are no windows in your sleeping pod. That's because there's nothing to see. Just rain, rain and more rain. The view hasn't changed in 1,000 years. Kamino doesn't have days or nights. It has shifts. The lighting inside adjusts according to the artificial clock. Morning is when the hallway glows a little warmer. Night is when it cools to a dim blue, like the colour of a surgical glove. That's your sunrise and sunset now. Outside there's no land, not a patch. Kamino is all ocean, vicious, roaring ocean. Winds can hit 300 kilometers per hour. Waves can reach 30 meters high. If you fall into the water during a storm, you're not coming back. Not because you can't swim, but because no one will be able to find you. The sea will simply eat you. That's why everything is built so high and so tight. Even the walkways between towers are enclosed. You'll never see anyone here carrying an umbrella. The architecture is brutally efficient. Every surface has a purpose. The corridors curve slightly. The floors slope just enough for water runoff, and doors seal shut like airlocks. You won't find posters or decoration. You won't even find furniture unless it serves a clearly defined function. Every room feels like a medical bay. There's always a subtle hum in the walls, a sign the environmental systems are working overtime to keep the humidity from corroding the tech. Cloning labs, monitoring stations, droid assistants, and AI-controlled incubation chambers. This isn't a city, it's a factory. Every hall, every tube, every display screen exists to serve one central goal, producing soldiers. You're surrounded by tanks filled with translucent fluid, with vague human shapes suspended inside. Sometimes you stop and stare. You recognize a face. It's your face. That's normal here. Get used to it. The Kaminoans move like doctors on rounds. They don't speak unless necessary. When they do, it's calm, clinical, and passive. Subject 33817 is displaying elevated aggression. Tank Group 47B has a 4% neural deviation. That's how they talk about people. Like data points. You might want to protest, but don't bother. It's not personal, it's just how this place works. Food is distributed 3 times a day in the mess hall, though calling it food is generous. It's more like greyish paste served in a compartmentalised tray. Nutrient balanced, calorie optimised, and completely tasteless. Sometimes it comes in cube form, sometimes a liquid, always awful. There's no kitchen, no chefs, no spices. The Kaminoans don't eat with you. You start to wonder if they even eat at all. There's no marketplace, no entertainment, no social hub. You don't go out anywhere. What would you do? Take a stroll through the storm? The social structure is basically non-existent. The only real gatherings happen during briefings, physical evaluations, or in shared training blocks. But even then, it's not really social. It's measured, monitored, timed. Who actually lives here besides you? Kaminoans, obviously. Scientists, engineers, medical experts, all working together in quiet synchronization. Then there are the clones, dozens of thousands of them. Most are still in early stages, embryos, juveniles, or still floating in tanks. You might pass another clone in the hall and not say a word. Maybe you're older, maybe he's younger. Doesn't matter. You've both got the same face, same haircut, same boots, and you'll both be gone in 20 years. And finally, there are the off-worlders. A few Republic officials, military personnel, or bounty hunters come and go. You see them sometimes. They look out of place, hunched against the rain in their cloaks and armor. Most don't stay long. Kamino has that effect on people. It's cold, it's damp, and it doesn't care if you like it or not. The only ones who thrive here are the ones who stopped thinking of it as a place at all. It's a system. You're just one tiny cog in it. And the daily schedule? Wake up, clean up, report to station. You may be tasked with scrubbing the floors of a sterile hall, assisting in cloning calibration, or hauling nutrient packs from one tower to another. Every task is assigned, tracked, and evaluated. Free time is rare. Privacy doesn't exist. Even the showers are timed. And you know what? It's all efficient. There's never a leak. Power never goes out. Systems never crash. If your heating unit malfunctions, it's replaced within minutes. If you cut yourself, a medical droid patches you up before you even feel the sting. Kamino doesn't make mistakes. It doesn't tolerate inefficiency. That's why you'll always feel replaceable here. Because you are. You came here to work, to observe, or maybe just to survive. But you won't leave unchanged. Kamino doesn't break you. It files you down, bit by bit, until you fit the machine. And if one day you crack, if the sterile walls get to you, if the endless rain finally breaks your mind, don't worry. You won't be the first. They've got a new clone batch warming up right now. Bespin is a gas giant, meaning if you step outside, you'll fall for about a minute before you even notice anything's wrong. Then you keep falling, and by the time your lungs realize there's no air left to scream, you're gone, vaporized in the crushing pressure of a world made entirely of sky. But you don't think about that much, because you live inside the only thing standing between you and a long descent into colorful death. Cloud City, a floating city that hovers in the upper atmosphere of Bespin, held aloft by repulsor lift engines and massive gas harvesters. It looks like a luxury cruise ship crossed with a carburetor. The dome top is shiny, sleek, and elegant. That's not where you live. That's for the guests, the tourists, the rich smugglers who pretend they aren't smugglers. The rest of the city? Down below, where it gets darker, louder, and wetter. The lower decks are where the real work happens. The gas mines, the processing bays, the supply corridors, the crew bunks, and of course, the incinerators, just in case something toxic leaks again. The city itself is more vertical than horizontal. You don't walk across it. You take lifts, stairs, chutes. From the top levels, gold-plated casinos and clear glass walkways, to the underbelly where everything drips with condensation and smells like burnt coolant. The deeper you go, the fewer windows you'll find. And when you do find one, it usually has a safety sign slapped on it, reminding you not to tap on the glass, because the pressure differential will rip it out of the frame again. Cloud City floats in a very specific atmospheric layer of Bespin. Too high, and the engines stall from lack of density. Too low, and the structure is crushed like a tin can. The habitable layer is maybe 30 kilometers thick. The engines have to keep the city balanced within it at all times. They don't always succeed. If a windstorm pushes Cloud City even a little off course, there's an entire floor crew whose only job is to run emergency thruster calculations to keep it stable. And if they're late, well, you've seen the old photos, the ones from the last platform that sank. The entire eastern residential sector just gone, torn from the framework like it was made of paper. Why does anyone live here? One word, Tibanna, a rare volatile gas that's used for bluster cooling, energy storage, and industrial shielding. It forms naturally in Bespin's upper atmosphere and is extracted through massive cylindrical harvesters that plunge downward like skyscrapers with teeth. Tibanna is valuable, especially during wartime. Everyone wants it. The Empire, the Rebels, the Hutts. Cloud City's entire economy exists because it sits on top of the galaxy's finest Tibanna mine. That and the casinos, and the tax breaks. Speaking of taxes, you don't pay them, at least not officially. That's the funny thing about living in Cloud City. You don't really live here, legally. Most of the workers are undocumented, not criminals, just unregistered. That's how management keeps wages low and complaints even lower. If you file too many reports, you'll be asked to take a vacation to the lower lift bay, the one with the door that opens the wrong way. No one's fired, they just fall off the records. The upper levels are reserved for guests and elites. Shiny lounges, Art Deco windows, imported plants that barely survive the humidity. You've maybe visited twice, once for an emergency repair job in the lobby fountain. The second time, you were escorted out for looking too sweaty. Meanwhile, the lower levels are full of maintenance staff, gas techs, ventilation crews, and machine operators. The kind of people who keep the city from turning into a floating coffin. The people who live here fall into a few categories. First, the miners, tough, tired, and covered in pressurized suits half the time. Then the traders and smugglers, constantly moving through docking bays, exchanging crates of Tibanna for credits or goods, and always checking for patrols. There are also tourists, though not many stay long. Cloud City sells itself as a luxury retreat, but the smell of gas and the occasional tremor makes the brochures look a little dishonest. And of course, there's the Empire. Stormtroopers started showing up more often. First it was just a customs office, then a garrison. Then someone you knew vanished after saying the wrong thing in the cafeteria. That's how things change around here, quietly. The city's administration is corporate. It used to have a real leader, someone who actually talked to people, someone who gambled with you in the sabak halls. But after the change in ownership, a strategic restructuring they called it, no one knows who's in charge anymore. Every directive comes from a console. Every request is filed into a queue that no one checks. The only people you see regularly are the droid auditors, the maintenance inspectors, and the security enforcers with brand new Imperial armbands. Dangers? Oh, plenty. Pressure leaks can rupture entire hallways. One time you saw a storage bay crushed from the outside because of a vent misalignment. There was nothing left, just the sound of creaking metal echoing in the corridors for hours. Sometimes you get windstorms so strong that they rattle the city's anchor points. You hear it, like thunder mixed with growling. Then you see the lights flicker. Then everything goes dark for just a moment. That's when you hold your breath. If the stabilizers fail, it's a one-way trip down. So let's say you're a usual worker in Tibanna mines. How about that? You live in a narrow unit stacked vertically with dozens of other workers. A sort of metal filing cabinet for exhausted human beings. You're 7 levels below the nicer parts of Cloud City, but technically still above the gas line, so management considers it prime location. Your mattress is thin, the air smells faintly of coolant, and you've learned not to question the mystery stains in the communal showers. You've also learned to sleep with one eye open, because sometimes the pressure fluctuates, and when it does, your ears pop like fireworks, and the emergency lights flicker for no reason. Still, this is your life. This is the Tibanna gas industry. You pull on your uniform, thick, heat-resistant fabric with padded knees and a gas mask that's seen better days. Some days you're on shaft duty, other days you're out walking the upper conduits, checking for stress fractures. If you're lucky, it's not your turn in the drip zones, where the temperature drops just low enough to let condensation form in the pipes, and then freeze, and then burst. You carry a patch kit, a scanner, and a long metal rod for knocking on the conduits to see if they sound hollow. If it rings weird, there's gas building up behind it. which means your shift just got a lot longer. The work isn't glamorous, it's not even clean. Most of your time is spent tightening valves, clearing sediment build-up from filtration units, and double-checking the oxygen lines. The smell of raw Tabana gas sticks to your clothes no matter how many times you wash them. Not that water is plentiful, showers are rationed, and soap is a luxury they don't include in the standard contract. There's also the drills. You do them once a week. Pressure breach, gas rupture, fire containment, partial collapse, sudden decompression. You and your co-workers shuffle through corridors like zombies during these drills, already tired before they begin, half mumbling the evacuation codes under your breath. But when it's not a drill, the alarms are deafening, the pressure drop hits fast, and someone always forgets their gear. And then there's the commute. You'd think living on the same station would make it easy, but no. The lifts are slow, the tunnels are cramped, and every week someone falls asleep during a ride and misses their stop. There's also a dedicated transit lane for executive-level access that runs through the middle of the structure. You're not allowed to use it. Sometimes you get stuck behind it for 10 minutes, watching a bunch of clean-shaven people in tailored uniforms glide past in a private lift. Your co-workers? A mixed bag. Some are here to support families back on Corellia. Some are running from something. A few just have nowhere else to go. You bond over broken tools and shared lunches, but no one gets too close. Workers come and go, especially when mining demand dips or someone finally saves up enough to leave. It's better that way, anyway. You don't want to get too attached to someone you'll probably never see again after next month's cycle. And your supervisors? They make it clear you're replaceable. The moment you speak up, they remind you there's a wait list of desperate people who take your bunk for half the pay. Sometimes they even threaten to assign you to external seal patrol, which is basically walking the outer hull in magnetic boots to check for leaks. One misstep and you're gone, drifting straight into the clouds below. And yet, this job pays. Barely. It covers food, housing, and a little left over if you're smart about it. You wire money off-world when you can. You dream about leaving, though you're not sure where you'd go. The moment you stop and think too hard about it all, you realise just how long you've been here. Still, there's something about the sky. When your shift ends and the transport tunnel brings you back up just high enough to see the orange light curling through the clouds, it makes you forget how awful it all is, at least for a minute. Welcome to Mustafar, or as the company brochure calls it, a world of opportunity. You'd laugh at that now, but the ash in the air makes it hard to breathe. You came here for a paycheck, and you're staying because the shuttle that dropped you off already left. It always does. Mustafar isn't just hot, it's volcanic hell. A fire-scarred planet in perpetual geological tantrum, where rivers of lava cut through blackened rock and firestorms roll across the sky like they're angry at you personally. There are no seasons here. There is no weather app. It's lava, ash, lightning, repeat, forever. The planet itself is technically alive. Well, geologically. It's constantly shifting, erupting, churning. You can't go 10 minutes without feeling a quake under your boots. And you better hope it's a small one, because when the big ones hit, entire facilities slide into the lava, and you don't even get time to clock out. That's Mustafar's way of saying goodbye. You live in a modular worker unit, which is corporate speak for a metal box, bolted onto a larger metal box. It's the size of a closet, and smells like heat-resistant foam and recycled sweat. You share a bathroom with 12 other people. There's a rotating shower schedule that might make you cry, if you weren't already so dehydrated. You work in a lava mine, specifically one of the countless facilities spread across the scorched landscape. The mineral here is rich, valuable stuff like obsidian, rare metals, and volatile compounds used for starship fuel. It pays well technically, but the hazard pay gets eaten up by your food ration, your oxygen supply, your water allotment, and your company-approved heat gear, which they say is optional, but try walking 10 meters outside without it and see how that goes. Every day starts with a thermal scan and a briefing on lava flows of concern. Then it's off to your assignment, clearing a new tunnel, replacing scorched panels, or recalibrating the cooling grid before it melts your station. If you're lucky, you're running diagnostics indoors. If not, you're out on the catwalks over a literal river of lava, with one glove that works and the other borrowed from a guy who quit 3 days ago. You try not to think about where he went. Lunch is something called nutrient loaf, and a drink pouch that tastes like citrus-flavoured steam. You eat in the break pod, which is less a room and more a heat-shielded bubble welded to the main structure. The walls creak constantly, and the lights flicker during storms. Everyone pretends not to notice. And then there's him, Darth Vader. His castle looms in the distance, carved directly into an obsidian cliff, towering above the lava like some ancient monster's tomb. You can see it from the catwalks, always dark, always silent. Sometimes, in the middle of a shift, the place lights up. A shuttle descends. A scream echoes across the plain. You don't talk about it. HR says not to ask questions. Nobody really knows why he built it here. Some say it's where he got burned. Others whisper it's some kind of dark shrine, feeding off the pain in the air. But most of the time, you just try not to look. Because sometimes, when you're walking to Maintenance Bay 7 and the air is full of sulfur, you swear you see a figure standing in the castle window, watching. Your co-workers are a mixed bunch. Some are hardened veterans who've been here so long they've started calling themselves lava lifers. Others are fresh off transport ships, eyes wide, thinking this will be a quick gig. It won't be. Nobody really leaves Mustafar. Not unless they're in a Bacta tank or a small box. There are no real bars, no cantinas. The closest thing to entertainment is the rec module, where a rusted holoprojector plays old reruns of Clone Wars propaganda and documentaries about volcanoes. Why? No one knows. People mostly just sit, stare and sip overheated caf, trying not to talk about the nightmares. The dangers aren't subtle. You worry constantly about overheating or stepping on a metal panel that gave out in the night. There are tremors that knock over entire platforms. Gas leaks, magma surges. You memorize the emergency routes, not because they work, but because it gives you the illusion of control. Then there's the corporate oversight. Management loves sending memos about improved morale and lava mindfulness breaks. They post safety posters with smiling droids holding up fire extinguishers. At night, you fall asleep to the sound of bubbling magma and metal groaning under pressure. The heat never stops. Welcome to Dathomir, the planet where our guy with the 2 spinning blades is from, Darth Maul. And if that doesn't already tell you enough, well, you're about to find out firsthand just how unpleasant this place really is. Dathomir is one of those planets you hear about in stories. The kind spacers talk about while half drunk, warning you never to go there, then laughing like they're not even sure if it's real. It's not on most star maps, and when it is, it's marked with words like restricted, or no landings, or just why. The sky is permanently tinted red. Not the kind of warm red you'd see at sunset. This is more like a dull, hazy crimson that makes everything look slightly sick. Even in the middle of the day, it feels like you're standing under a heat lamp that's about to pop. The mist rolls in early, clinging to your boots, sneaking into your tent, and smelling faintly like something between burnt plastic and wet metal. You start coughing after the first day, and you just never really stop. The terrain is no better. Forget open plains or flat desert. Everything here is either a jagged cliff or a muddy acidic swamp. The forests are dense and crooked, with trees that don't grow straight, but twist and curl like they're trying to pull away from the ground. The bark is black, the leaves are dark red, and touching anything without gloves is just not a great idea. Some trees are alive in ways you don't fully understand. You swear one of them moved once when you weren't looking. There's no infrastructure, no roads, safe houses, or friendly outposts to stop by and catch your breath. You live out of a shelter you built yourself, or more likely, you're squatting in the crumbling remains of something ancient and half swallowed by vines. If you're lucky, it's just abandoned. If not, something still lives there. And it might not like the company. There's no real food supply either. The wildlife is, well, it's alive, but you wouldn't want to eat most of it. The few things you can cook don't taste right. Everything has this sour, gritty texture, like chewing rubber soaked in vinegar. After a week, you stop asking what it is and just hope it doesn't bite back when you chew. Your stomach adjusts eventually, sort of. And water? You have to boil everything. Even then, it comes out with a rusty aftertaste that makes your teeth feel weird. You learn quickly to stop being picky. There's no delivery service or shops here, just what you can scavenge, trap or scrape off rocks. But the worst part isn't what you see, it's what you feel. There's something in the air. The force is thick here, and you don't need to be a Jedi to sense it. It presses on your chest when you wake up, And sometimes, in the silence of early morning, you swear you hear voices. Not whispering exactly, more like echoes of something that shouldn't be echoing. Like the planet itself remembers things, and wants you to remember them too. Every night is harder than the last. You try to sleep, but the silence is never really silent. There's always some low hum or distant screech, or the sound of something walking. You learn not to investigate. If it wants to find you, it will. And if it doesn't, well, lucky you. Then there are the ruins. They're everywhere. Stone structures half buried in the swamps, or nestled deep in the cliffs. Carvings you can't translate. Doorways that lead nowhere. The wildlife isn't much friendlier. You might see a rancor if you're unlucky, or lucky, depending on how you feel about quick deaths. There are also smaller things, winged predators with translucent skin and too many eyes, venomous lizards that camouflage perfectly in the red underbrush, and those weird hounds that don't bark but make this low rattling sound in their throats before they leap. It's a little sound that'll stick in your brain for good. Even during the day, you're never comfortable. The heat fluctuates randomly. One minute you're sweating so much you think you'll faint. The next you're freezing cold because some sudden localized storm just rolled through and dumped black rain and all over everything. And that rain, it stains. You scrub it off your clothes, but it never really comes out. Every time you try to relax, something tenses up again. You don't trust the shadows. You stop using lights at night because they draw attention. You sleep in shifts, if you sleep at all. You learn to keep a weapon nearby, even if you're just heading out to use the bathroom equivalent, which is usually a pit behind a rock, by the way. There's no community. You might stumble across other people, but no one says hi. They look at you like you're already dead. Some are scavengers, others are lost. A few might be former cultists, Sith wannabes, or Force-sensitive outcasts who came here looking for power and stayed because they couldn't leave. Conversations are short, trust is non-existent. And still, the strangest thing is, no matter how bad it gets, how rotten the food is, how thick the mist is, how many days you go without seeing the sun or hearing your own voice, you always feel like you're not alone. Even when you know, logically, that nothing is nearby. Some say it's just the magic in the soil, the Night Sisters' legacy, or the trauma etched into the ground from centuries of blood rituals and force manipulation. Others think the planet itself is alive in some way, aware, maybe sentient. It's hard to describe, but after a while, you stop questioning it. You just accept that Dathomir doesn't want you here. Not really, it tolerates you for now. So you keep your head down. You set up tripwires, cook with one eye open, and avoid any building that looks older than your ship. And deep down, even if you won't say it out loud, you know you've made a mistake coming here, but it's too late to leave. Because no one really leaves Dathomir, not the same as they came. So let's say, for some reason, you stick around on Dathomir. You survive your first few days without getting ripped apart by a nocturnal predator or falling into a sinkhole full of acidic mud. Now let's talk about Night Sisters. Hooded figures moving through the fog, half cloaked in shadows. They don't walk like normal people. It's more like gliding, like the air's thinner where they move. The Night Sisters are Dathomir's ruling class, but not in any way you'd expect. Their authority doesn't come from politics or weapons. It comes from the raw, twisted energy of the dark side. They don't use the Force like the Jedi or Sith do. They wield it, shape it, cast it into rituals and spells that defy logic. This isn't your clean, glowing blue Force with a wise teacher and a destiny. This is green smoke, blood offerings, and whispering voices under your skin. And they're not even trying to hide it. They live in natural fortresses, massive roots and stone spires grown into temples, half built and half summoned from the planet itself. Inside, you'll find arcane symbols, bones arranged in spirals, bubbling cauldrons full of glowing sludge. There's no datapads, no screens, no modern tech, just instinct, ritual, and a terrifying mastery of the energy that flows through the planet. If you wander too close, your ears might ring, your nose might bleed, or you might start hearing voices calling you by name, even if no one's there. The Night Sisters have been here for thousands of years. No one knows exactly how long. Their magic is ancient, older than most Republic records, older than even the Jedi know how to trace. Some think they were a splinter group of Force users who got stranded here and adapted. Others say they came from the planet, that Dathomir itself birthed them. Honestly, after a few weeks here, you'll stop asking. You'll just accept that they are the planet in some way. Their presence is baked into the soil, the trees, even the wind. And Darth Maul? He's exactly what Dathomir makes. He was raised by the Night Sisters, trained in their rituals, and shaped by their view of the Force. His rage, his strength, his hatred, it's not an accident. It's the export product of a planet that breeds warriors, witches, and madness like a seasonal crop. They're not evil, though. Most of them just want to protect their own kind. Their magic is built on survival, not conquest. And given how many times they've been wiped out by Jedi, Sith, and even General Grievous during the Clone Wars, it's hard to blame them for being hostile. That invasion left scars that never healed. Some say the planet itself has grown more aggressive since then. More storms, more accidents, more people hearing voices in the trees. There's a reason the Jedi never really came here. They didn't understand it, and they probably didn't want to. Even the Sith were uneasy about Dathomir. Darth Sidious saw the Night Sisters as useful tools, nothing more. He sent Maul here to be trained in secret. Born a Zabrak, raised in the dark. But even he didn't fully trust them. How could he? The Night Sisters don't follow orders. They follow visions, dreams, bloodlines. And sometimes those visions involve tearing down empires. Life near them is strange. The air around their territory hums with energy, but it's not comforting. If you spend too long near their lair, you get nosebleeds, your head aches, you see things you're not supposed to. People go missing near the woods, and no one talks about it. The Night Sisters don't take prisoners. They take subjects. If you're lucky, they'll use you for a ritual and then leave you alone. If you're unlucky, they'll bring you back, probably. Tropical beaches, shimmering water, and tall, elegant palms swaying in the breeze. It looks like paradise. It even smells like paradise. But you're not here on vacation. You live here, or maybe you work here. And if you want to keep living, you'd better not forget who's really in charge. Welcome to Scarif, a quiet, sun-soaked planet tucked away in the outer rim. It doesn't show up on most star charts. That's not an accident. It's an Imperial Archive world, a heavily restricted, high-security location where data vaults, experimental projects, and confidential operations are tucked away in towers that rise above the ocean like brutalist monoliths. And you're just one of the many who keep it all running behind the scenes. Let's start with the planet itself. Scarif is what you'd get if a travel agent and a dictator designed a world together. Warm climate, endless ocean, and scattered islands full of golden sand and vibrant plant life. The kind of place you'd imagine sipping a drink under a sunshade. But here, that dream ends fast. The beaches are lined with perimeter sensors and laser fences. The skies are crowded with TIE patrols and surveillance drones. Every grain of sand is tracked. Every footstep echoes somewhere in an Imperial report. The humidity is constant, that kind of deep, salty heat that wraps around your neck and settles into your clothes. It's not unbearable, but it gets into everything. Your boots, your bunks, even your tools. You wipe down gear one day and find corrosion the next. Rust is a co-worker here, and then there's the glare. The sun hits the water at just the right angle to blind you on your commute every morning, especially if you're heading across one of the skywalks that connect the archive towers. No shades allowed, by the way. Not standard issue. You live in the lower levels of the base, underground or partially submerged. The kind of place where hallways hum with life support systems and the walls constantly drip with condensation. Your bunk is a stackable cot built into the wall, with just enough room to sit up if you slouch. You share a room with 3 other workers, and one of them snores like a busted speeder engine. The food is processed and rehydrated. The showers are cold. The music in the rec room is always one track behind on the galactic charts, and no one knows how to fix it. Your job could be anything. Data technician, maintenance crew, sanitation, assistant loader, doesn't matter. It all means the same thing. Long hours, constant monitoring, and absolutely no questions. You move crates you're not allowed to open. You maintain systems you don't understand. You carry data chips with triple encrypted project codenames like Stellar Prism or Blackfire, and no idea what they actually mean. Once you asked your supervisor what Dustwind referred to, you didn't get an answer, but you did get reassigned to night shift, where the air circulation is worse and the lights buzz just a little louder. And above it all, literally, is the orbital security ring, a massive defense station in constant rotation above Scarif, watching everything. There's no way on or off the planet without clearance. Incoming ships are scanned, tracked, and escorted. Outgoing ships? Almost none. You've seen co-workers apply for off-world leave and just disappear. Maybe they got approved, maybe they didn't. Every so often, there's a drill, or at least that's what you're told. Sirens blare, lockdown protocols engage, and everyone rushes to their assigned safe zone. You sit there, pressed against the wall, with dozens of others, trying not to make eye contact, trying not to think about what's being tested up in the higher levels of the tower. You heard once, just a rumour, that some of the experimental weapons research gets done here too. That someone brought a kyber crystal through last year under heavy guard. You try not to believe it, but Scarif has that kind of silence, the kind where secrets feel like they're humming in the walls. Still, not everything is miserable. You've got the view. If you're lucky enough to work maintenance on one of the upper catwalks or command balconies, the sunset over the water is breathtaking. The ocean turns to gold, and for a moment, the whole world looks like peace. Some nights you sneak up there with a thermos of caf, sit with your back against the railing, and pretend you're anywhere else. The wildlife? Practically non-existent on the islands. The Imperials cleared most of it out when they built the facility, but in the deeper ocean, far below, sometimes you'll feel vibrations, faint, slow, rhythmic pulses in the floor, like something enormous is moving down there. You mention it to others, but no one ever talks about it twice. Social life is complicated. You make friends cautiously, everyone's on edge. You learn to speak in half sentences, in gestures, in glances. You don't say too much, you don't trust too easily. There are informants, after all. And even if there weren't, paranoia is practically written into the architecture. Cameras in every corridor, access logs on every door. Scarif doesn't want you to feel welcome. It wants you to feel useful and replaceable. Still, some people like it here. The order, the predictability, the idea that the work they're doing matters, that they're contributing to something bigger. Maybe they're right. Maybe the galaxy needs a place like Scarif, a place to hold its deepest, most dangerous knowledge far away from everything else. But the truth is you'll never know. You'll never be told what's really stored in the vault. You'll never read the files. You'll never meet the architects of the projects you support. You're not here to understand. You're here to stay out of the way. And if one day something goes wrong, if alarms blare for real, if explosions shake the tower, if the sky turns red with fire from orbit, there's no emergency exit. No evac shuttles for workers, no escape pods, just the ocean, just the heat, just the sound of your own breath as you realise that paradise was never meant to save you, it was meant to bury the evidence. Alderaan was one of those planets that seemed too perfect for its own good. Orbiting peacefully around its blue-white star, this world was often held up as the poster child of what the galaxy could be like if people just stopped blowing each other up for 5 minutes. It had snow-capped mountains, wide green valleys, lakes so clear they looked artificial, and floating spires of ivory white stone that caught the sun just right in the early morning. It was beautiful. The kind of place you'd see on a postcard or a travel brochure with the slogan, "Find peace beneath the peaks of Alderaan." But Alderaan wasn't just for show. It was the cultural and intellectual capital of the core worlds, a hub of diplomacy, science, education, and fine arts. Universities here were older than some civilizations. The royal palace in Alderaan housed thousands of ancient texts, and it wasn't uncommon for off-worlders to come here just to attend a philosophy symposium or get into a good debate in one of the open-air forums. The people prided themselves on non-violence, elegance, and ethics, which in hindsight probably made them a prime target for the Empire. The planet itself was a mostly temperate climate. Alderaan didn't really do extremes. Summers were mild and full of flowers. Winters dusted the mountains in powdery snow but rarely froze the cities. The wind carried a sweet, herbal scent that came from the endless meadows of tall blue-green grasses and low aromatic plants like silverbark and aldra moss. The air was crisp and clean. No factories belching smoke, no city smog. Even the ships ran on clean ion power. Standard protocol for Alderaan's eco-laws, which were stricter than most galactic governments dared to dream. Cities were built with harmony in mind, not just harmony with nature, but social harmony too. Buildings weren't allowed to overshadow each other. No towering skyscrapers or neon chaos. Everything was built in pale stone or reflective glass that blended into the hills and cliffs. Homes had open balconies, indoor gardens, and curved architecture that mimicked natural patterns. From above, the cities looked like pearls scattered across green velvet. Alderaan's capital, Alderaan, was nestled between glacial rivers and alpine peaks. It was a quiet city, despite being the political heart of the planet. You'd hear wind chimes and string instruments before you heard a speeder. Droids moved slowly here. Everyone did. It wasn't laziness, but it was a cultural reverence for calmness. Rushing was seen as impolite. Interrupting someone in conversation was basically a war crime. And then there was the wildlife. Alderaan had no large predators, and people liked to brag about that, as if they'd evolved beyond the need for anything scary. Birds in every colour nested in the tall, whispering trees. Herds of gentle thranta, kind of like flying whales with wings, were often seen soaring between cliffs, carrying passengers or cargo the old-fashioned way. Even the insects weren't annoying. Most of them glowed softly and stayed in the underbrush. The people of Alderaan were proud but not arrogant. If anything, they leaned toward idealism, and that was both their strength and their blind spot. They truly believed in diplomacy. They believed the Empire could be reasoned with. Many citizens were pacifists or scholars, deeply invested in restoring the Republic through non-violent resistance. That made the presence of weapons, even small ones, somewhat taboo. Civilians rarely owned blasters. The idea of militarizing was seen as almost vulgar. Why point a gun when you could debate someone into understanding your perspective? Alderaan's government was led by House Organa, a noble house known throughout the galaxy for its fairness, compassion, and wisdom. Bail Organa, the viceroy, was well respected both within the Senate and among his people. He walked through the markets like anyone else. Kids knew his name, people waved when they saw him. He didn't need bodyguards in Alderaan, at least not until the last few years, when the political tension started tightening like a noose. And yet, despite all its peaceful ideals, Alderaan wasn't naive. There were whispers. People knew something was coming. Imperial surveillance had increased. Rebel sympathizers were disappearing. Bail Organa's public smile had grown thinner. Leia, his adopted daughter, was always off-world on diplomatic business. But it didn't take a genius to know that something was being built in the shadows. And Alderaan, as noble and pristine as it was, had chosen a side. Life here in those final months was quietly tense. People still had their festivals, their open-air poetry readings, their lakeside picnics and philosophical discussions. But beneath it all, there was a faint tremor, the local news carefully avoiding certain topics. Still, it was easy to forget all that if you looked out at the sunrise over the mountain ridge, if you tasted an Alderaanian berry tart or walked barefoot through the grass after morning dew. It was easy to believe the planet would always be there, stable, safe, above it all. That was Alderaan's greatest illusion. That peace, once earned, could never be taken away. Alderaan was beautiful, genuinely, deeply beautiful. You lived in one of the mid-sized cities nestled into a green valley, not quite as glamorous as the capital, but close enough that you'd sometimes take a weekend trip there, just to wander around and feel sophisticated. The buildings here were low, sleek, and white. It was all designed to feel natural, to blend in, like the people of Alderaan didn't want to disturb the land too much. That meant a lot of glass, open terraces, gardens on rooftops, and long pedestrian walkways with good views of the horizon. You'd wake up each morning with sunlight spilling in through the curved ceiling of your apartment, actual sunlight, not filtered light through smog or a habitat dome. Your window looked out over the valley. You could see lakes and forests, and beyond them, the distant blue silhouettes of the Duran Mountains. Sometimes, you'd catch a glimpse of the royal palace glittering in the early morning. Birds chirped. Actual birds, not warning sirens or repulsor lift engines. Then your datapad would buzz. You worked for a moderately large firm that dealt with interplanetary logistics, mostly import-export permits and tax processing for Alderaanian industries. In other words, you did a lot of spreadsheets. Your desk was by the window. Your boss was nice, but constantly asking if you'd reviewed the cargo route manifests from Chandrila. You wore the same polished shoes every day and kept them clean, because Alderaan was the kind of place where people noticed dusty shoes. Your commute involved a clean, fast maglev train that glided over rivers and forests. Nobody shoved or yelled. People said, "Good morning," wore tasteful coats, and read physical books. Everything was quiet, orderly, and kind of idyllic. There were no street vendors shouting at you, no crime to speak of, and hardly any need for security patrols. It was just calm, and maybe a little boring. You had friends, of course, most people here did. Social events were low-key, garden parties, lectures at the university, outdoor concerts in the capital. You dated someone for a while who worked at the Museum of Natural Harmony. They talked a lot about sculpture. You broke up amicably and still exchanged holiday messages. Nobody screamed, nobody threatened to blow up the building. Even your heartbreaks were well-mannered. Here the war felt distant. You heard about it through news bulletins and whispered complaints, but Alderaan always felt like a safe haven, a sanctuary planet. Senator Bail Organa was already gaining a reputation as someone bold, intelligent, and outspoken. You thought it was cool that someone from your planet was actually doing something. You didn't know, of course, what they were doing. You didn't know about rebel cells or secret transmissions or stolen plans. You weren't a rebel. You were a citizen. You recycled, you paid your taxes, you believed in diplomacy. And then the sky changed. You remember the moment it happened. You were at your desk, the day was normal. You had just poured a cup of something warm, glanced over at your colleague across the office who was wearing that ridiculous belt again, and then everything went wrong. And then nothing. Afterward, they called it a necessary act, a warning, a demonstration of imperial power. Some believed it was fake news, others said Alderaan must have been hiding dangerous secrets. A few even blamed the people, but you hadn't done anything. You had just been alive, working a boring job, sipping tea, taking the train home to your peaceful apartment. Alderaan was more than a planet. It was an idea. The idea that beauty and peace could exist without violence. That a culture could thrive without conquest. That art, harmony, and wisdom mattered. That wars could be avoided. That maybe the galaxy didn't have to be on fire all the time. That idea was blown to dust in a second. And all that's left now is memory and grief, carried by the few survivors scattered across space, clinging to their culture, their manners, their stories, trying to find meaning in the loss, trying to rebuild something, anything, in a galaxy that looked the other way when their world burned. So yeah, you worked in accounting, you loved birds, you owned too many pairs of socks, and your planet, your home, your friends, your favourite lake, your dumb boss, your ex from the sculpture museum, they're all gone. Just like that, and all because someone decided that Alderaan didn't matter. So, you've ended up on Endor. You're on the forest moon, the one full of oversized trees, strange howling in the dark, and creatures with round eyes that blink way too slowly. Welcome to the place where logs are deadlier than blasters, and the locals have a suspicious interest in your wristwatch. Let's start with the planet, or more accurately, the forest moon. Endor is technically just the satellite of a gas giant, but you'd never know it from the surface. Lush, dense, and seemingly endless, the forests are both majestic and exhausting. Giant conifers and towering alien redwoods stretch hundreds of feet into the sky, so tightly packed that light barely filters through during the day. At night, it gets dark, like pitch dark. If your lantern runs out of power and you're 10 steps from your hut, say goodbye to your ankles. Something's already chewing on them. The temperature is surprisingly moderate for such a wild ecosystem. Days are breezy and humid. Nights can drop to chilly levels, especially when fog rolls in low across the forest floor. The air is fresh, crisp even, filled with the scent of pine sap, moss and wet bark. It's nature's air freshener until something rotting crawls out from under a fallen tree. And trust me, something always does. The climate gives you rain about every 3 days, usually unannounced. Showers can be short or relentless. You'll learn quickly that drying clothes is an eternal struggle. Nothing ever feels fully dry. Not your socks, not your sleeping mat, not even your morale. And your boots? They're always damp. As for infrastructure, good luck. There are no roads, there are no cities. There are paths, if you're generous, usually created by creatures that are either friendly or just temporarily full. If you're with a small research outpost, you might get lucky with a small solar grid, a water filter, and maybe even a signal beacon. Otherwise, you're living in tree houses built with vines and wood, hoping the floorboards hold. There's no plumbing unless you count a pipe running into a bucket, and that bucket, you empty it, or a helpful Ewok does, if they feel like it. Now, about those Ewoks, you've heard of them. Small, cuddly-looking, tribal bear people with spears. But don't let the stuffed animal exterior fool you. These little guys are survivors, engineers, tacticians, also pranksters. If you go to bed with boots on, there's a good chance you'll wake up without socks and a handmade grass bracelet around your ankle. No one will admit who made it, but they all giggle when you ask. The Ewoks are territorial, but oddly welcoming, as long as you don't step on their sacred moss patches or insult their cooking. Speaking of food, life on Endor is all about foraging. Berries, roots, grilled bugs, if you're lucky, roast meat over a spit, though you're never 100% sure what kind of meat. You might also find yourself at one of their feasts. It's hard to tell if you're the guest or the main course. Again, they're giggling. Wildlife? Everywhere. Endor is the galaxy's unofficial sanctuary for things with too many teeth and not enough fear of fire. Massive howlers stalk the trees at night. Small rodent-like creatures skitter through campgrounds and chew through wiring. There are gliders that silently swoop down from the canopy, and snakes that hang from vines like ripe fruit. Endor has seen battles after all. It was the site of the Empire's biggest oops. You might stumble across old wreckage from the Death Star's debris, half buried in vines, its metal twisted and blackened. Some people say it's cursed, others say it's salvage. Guess which type you are when you can't pay rent. As for relaxation, that's a complicated concept on Endor. There's no holonet connection, no entertainment hub, no cantinas. Recreation usually means dancing with Ewoks around a fire, climbing trees for fruit, or playing a tense game of, is that noise getting closer? The closest thing to a bar is drinking fermented root juice out of a wooden mug and pretending you like the taste. You don't. And yet, it's not all bad. Endor is quiet, in a deep, wild, untouched way. The stars here are unbelievably bright. There's no light pollution, just the glow of torches and starlight reflected off leaves. The air tastes like wilderness. If you've got the right mindset, it's almost meditative. There's something deeply ancient about this place, something that reminds you that you're a tiny thing in a much bigger story. But peaceful as it might seem, don't get too comfortable. This forest doesn't care about you. It's beautiful, yes, but indifferent. It'll swallow your camping roots if you turn your back for a few days. The Ewoks might let you stay, but they'll never fully trust you. And at some point, you'll wake up to find your toolkit missing, replaced by a neatly carved wooden spoon. Why? No one tells you. They just keep giggling. Welcome to Endor. Hope you packed extra socks. The cities are gone. The people are scattered. The glory is mostly in their heads. Welcome to Mandalore, a planet where everything is ash and everyone walks around like it's still 400 BBY. If you're somehow still alive here, congratulations. That means you've either got a helmet or you've got a death wish, or maybe both. You wake up each day to a pale orange sky with dust storms on the horizon and collapsed domes in the distance. The air isn't toxic exactly, but after a few years of breathing it, your lungs start to disagree. The surface of the planet is pockmarked with ancient craters and new ones, courtesy of the Empire, the Purge, Civil War, and Mandalorians being Mandalorians. There used to be cities here, big ones, towering sealed domes like Sundari that protected people from the harsh environment and gave Mandalore its reputation for advanced architecture and culture. But now the dome is shattered, most of them are. What's left is metal skeletons, twisted beams, cracked transparasteel, and hollow corridors that echo in the wind. A lot of folks live in the ruins, salvaging scrap, building makeshift homes inside fallen superstructures, or hiding out in bunkers from the Clone Wars era. The more superstitious types don't go near the ruins. Too many ghosts, too many memories. The climate isn't friendly either. Think of it like a bad Tatooine with no charm. It's dry, but not comfortably dry. The winds carry metal particles that sting your skin and ruin your equipment. You wear full armor, not for tradition, but because walking outside in anything less means you'll be exfoliated to death by sharp dust. There's little vegetation, unless you count the scattered stubborn weeds growing near cooling vents or underground water reservoirs. Most food is imported, scavenged, or grown in recycled, nutrient-paste farms built into old Clone Wars tech. You might think, Well, at least the planet is quiet now. Wrong again. Mandalore doesn't do quiet. Wildlife here is scarce but dangerous. Giant reptilian scavengers dig through rubble, looking for warm bodies. There are packs of semi-domesticated beasts that were once used as mounts or war animals, now half feral, surviving in the shadows of broken cities. Some clans keep them as pets, others just avoid them. At night, the temperature drops fast. It gets cold, and your HUD fogs up unless you've sealed it properly. You learn fast or you don't last long. What's worse is the sense of tension in the air. Mandalorians live by a code, but not everyone agrees on what that code is. You've got children of the Watch in one canyon, pacifists hiding underground, ex-night owls running smuggling jobs, and scattered warlords still pretending they're leading something. And all of them think they're the real Mandalorians. They give you side eyes if your armor isn't painted right. They ask which way you follow. And heaven help you if you take off your helmet in public. Even the droids will judge you. Social life here is complicated. There are no real cities anymore, just gatherings. Maybe 6 to 10 families under one ruined hangar roof. You share food, you trade equipment, and you keep an eye on each other. You eat a lot of ration bars and soup. You sleep in shifts. You train with blasters in the morning and patch holes in your armor at night. And if you're lucky, someone nearby still has a working holo projector, so you can watch old warrior reels or listen to ancient Mando chants over static. Celebrations still happen, sort of. Mandalorians don't party like Coruscanti. They spar, they chant, they fix each other's jetpacks. Once in a while, someone brings out a helmet-shaped cake or a Corellian bottle of something that's probably flammable. It's not glamorous, but it keeps morale up. No one talks much about the past. The Clone Wars, the Siege of Mandalore, the Great Purge. Everyone here lost someone. Everyone here has scars. You don't get many visitors. Most outsiders avoid Mandalore. There's a reputation, and it's not good. The Empire bombed it into ruin. The New Republic wrote it off as a tragic mess. Even scavengers are hesitant. There are too many minefields, too many rogue turrets left in standby mode, too many angry clans ready to shoot you for asking the wrong question. But occasionally, someone shows up looking for glory or history or rumors about the Darksaber. They don't always leave, and if you're thinking of leaving yourself, well, good luck. Transport is limited, starships are a luxury, and fuel is precious. Most people barter for a seat off-world by offering rare alloys or old weapons. Some just wait for a Mandalorian caravan to come through and hope for a ride. But even then, there's a feeling that leaving Mandalore is a betrayal. It's in your blood, it's in your armor. You might leave the planet, but the planet never leaves you. So yeah, your life on post-war Mandalore is not glamorous. It's gritty, quiet, and full of unspoken tension. But for the people who stay, it's still home. A broken home, yes, but a place worth fighting for. And that's kind of the point. Mandalorians don't need comfort, they need purpose. Even if that purpose is patching a hole in your dome before the next storm hits, with sand in your boots and no chairs in sight. There's a specific kind of despair that sets in when you realize your mattress is half submerged in swamp water and the local wildlife has claimed your sock drawer. Welcome to Dagobah, the place where dreams come to die in a puddle of green fog, mosquito bites and strange noises that don't sound like anything in the galactic species database. It's humid, it's wet, and it smells like old stew and regret. The moment your ship crash landed here, you knew things had gone wrong. The trees were so tall, you couldn't see the sky anymore. And the vines, they were already wrapping around your landing gear like they'd been waiting. There's no spaceport or roads or even a few signs of civilization, unless you count a crooked hut made of mud and sticks, built suspiciously close to a bubbling pit that might be boiling something with teeth. And that's when you meet him, the little green guy. He offers you soup. You take it, of course. You're starving. It tastes like boiled sadness and tree bark, but you finish the bowl anyway. Congratulations, you now live with Yoda. The swamp is your new home. Every surface is either wet, slimy, or alive, usually all three. You sleep on a makeshift bed made from dry leaves and pieces of your old flight suit. There's no sun, not really. Just a vague glow that filters through the dense canopy above, giving everything a murky green tint. And it's always warm. Not the cozy kind of warm. The kind of warm that makes your skin stick to itself and never quite lets your clothes dry. Every time you step outside, your boots make a sound like a dying Gungan. The wildlife here is not just aggressive, it's confusing. You once saw a frog eat a bird, and then the bird came back 2 hours later and ate the frog. Snakes drop from trees like lazy assassins. Winged insects, the size of your palm hum, just above your head at all times, apparently fueled by stress and the scent of fear. There's a thing with too many legs that lives under your cot. You've decided to ignore each other. Then there are the sounds. Dagobah is never silent. It breathes, it groans, it moans, it screeches. Sometimes it laughs. You're not sure if that last one was Yoda. And oh, the Force. You didn't believe in that kind of thing when you first got here. You were a mechanic, not a mystic. But on Dagobah, the Force is thick. It hums in the air. You feel it in the roots of trees and the movement of the mist. Sometimes you see things that aren't there. Sometimes they talk to you. Sometimes you talk back. You're not sure if that's normal or if the soup was bad. There's a cave too. Yoda won't talk about it much. Says it's strong with the dark side and then changes the subject to stew ingredients. But the cave calls to you. One day you go in, you see things, you feel cold, you come out different, but you don't remember why. You just know that the trees seem taller now, and the water colder, and that you don't sleep as easily as you used to. Life with Yoda is quiet, but never peaceful. He meditates, you try, you fall asleep sitting up. He levitates small rocks, you try, you get a nosebleed. Food is whatever doesn't run away fast enough. Sometimes Yoda forages for glowing roots or slime-covered mushrooms. Sometimes you catch something with a net. Sometimes you eat soup again. You never ask what's in it. You've learned better. Bathing is a concept you abandoned in week 2. You just sit in the water and let nature do its thing. You still smell awful, but at least now you match the environment. There are no neighbours, no one drops by, no salespeople, no mail, just you, Yoda, and the swamp, and something out in the trees that always stays just out of sight. It's not that you're unhappy exactly, it's just that your expectations have shifted. Happiness is a dry leaf to sleep on. Joy is catching a bug before it lands in your soup. Success is not being eaten before breakfast. Occasionally you get visitors. Jedi, mostly. They come, they sit, and they train. Then they leave yapping about saving some guy named Han Solo because he was captured on Bespin. Rain is frequent. It doesn't pour, it seeps. It rises up from the ground, down from the trees, sideways from the fog. You wake up wet, you go to sleep wet. You've forgotten what it feels like to be dry. Geonosis isn't a planet you choose. It's a planet that happens to you. And once you're here, it doesn't take long before the dry air and the strange insect-like architecture start to feel a little too normal. The sky is always tinged with orange dust. The horizon never looks clean. Every breath feels filtered through sandpaper. It's hot during the day, freezing at night, and there's no real concept of shade. The sun just burns from above. You try not to look up. You try not to breathe too deeply, either. The first thing you notice is the sound. Geonosis hums. It's a constant low drone, like an entire planet of giant bugs whispering to each other through the rock. The terrain doesn't help. Jagged stone spires, endless canyons, and long natural tunnels that echo every movement. You can't hear yourself think sometimes. The rock formations rise around you like broken bones. It's easy to get lost out there. Some people say the planet's surface shifts in small ways, as if it's alive. You're not sure if that's superstition or side effects of dehydration, but either way, no one wanders too far alone. You live underground, obviously. Everything happens in hives. Big carved-out caverns of industry and noise. The Geonosians built them that way, and even though they're mostly gone now, their architecture remains, and you have to live in it. Tall ceilings, organic curves in the walls. No furniture that makes sense to a human. You sleep in a nest-shaped dent carved into the side of a wall, with a thermal blanket and a bag of bug repellent. There's no traditional weather on Geonosis, just occasional sandstorms that sweep through the canyons and ruin your only clean shirt. The wind carries with it microscopic grit that clings to your skin and hair and teeth. You stop trying to fight it. Everything you own is a different shade of beige now. Even your datapad doesn't load right anymore. Something about static charge in the air, or maybe just too much dust. Wildlife? Yeah, there's a lot of it. You haven't seen it all, and honestly, you don't want to. There are giant beetles that cling to the walls and flap around like broken ceiling fans. There are winged things with too many eyes that only come out at night. Then there's the brainworms. You heard about those from the med team. supposedly extinct, supposedly. You wear a helmet whenever you're near open food, just in case. The Geonosians themselves? Mostly gone. After the Clone Wars, the Empire showed up and made a mess of things. There was a time when the hives buzzed with life, strange rituals and clacking sounds you didn't understand. Now they're empty, silent ruins with scratch marks on the walls and forgotten tech buried under the dust. You work 12 hours a day assembling battle droid parts for some obscure contractor. The factory still runs somehow, even though the war ended decades ago. It's unclear who's funding it, but your credits get deposited on time, and your meals are technically edible. The cafeteria serves nutrient paste with optional texture modules. Some days you just drink water and call it a win. The communal showers don't work. There's a ration on water. You haven't had a proper rinse in weeks, and the guy next to you smells like a mix of fuel, fear, and beetle spit. Sometimes you look out toward the Petranaki Arena, the place where Jedi once fought beasts the size of speeders. It's still there, crumbling, haunted maybe. Before the warships descended and the Jedi came slicing through corridors, Geonosis was, well, still kind of miserable, but in a quieter, more organised way. It was hot, dusty, and utterly dominated by bug bureaucracy. And the locals, you couldn't really call them friendly, but they weren't exactly hostile either, unless you disrespected the hive hierarchy. Geonosians were all about order, loyalty, and tradition. Their society was rigid, caste-based, and eerily efficient. Every drone had a role. Every overseer had authority. At the top, the Hive Queen. You never saw her. You didn't want to. She was sacred, kept deep underground in enormous chambers filled with eggs and humming vibrations. Communication was tricky. Geonosians didn't talk like you. They used clicks, warbles, and ultrasonic pulses. Translators helped, but not much. Still, you learned the basics. A click meant stop. A double click meant move. A long droning buzz meant get out before something bad happens. It wasn't an ideal working environment, but hey, employment was steady. What did you actually do? Well, Geonosis was known for its manufacturing. These factories were huge, loud, and always partially collapsing. Conveyor belts snaked through tunnels, pouring molten alloys and pumping out limbs for machines that hadn't been approved by any legal governing body. This was the Confederacy's worst-kept secret, long before the Clone Wars ever started. Battle droids were being built in secret for years, just in case. The arena itself was a central feature. Not a place of sport, really. It was more ceremonial. When the Hive wanted to make an example of someone, or prove dominance, they brought them there. And when the arena was quiet, it was repurposed as a kind of gathering spot, a public demonstration zone. Culturally, the planet was unique. The Geonosians worshipped structure and tradition. Everything they did served the Hive. Art was rare, but they had a knack for design. Elegant curves carved from stone, intricate markings etched into corridor walls, and elaborate ceremonial headpieces worn during rites of passage. You couldn't tell if a Geonosian was celebrating or threatening you half the time. Welcome to Felucia, the most beautiful nightmare in the galaxy. At first glance, it feels like stepping into a dream. The sky glows with soft hues of violet and teal, casting a strange light over the endless jungle of bioluminescent plants. Massive, translucent mushrooms rise like trees glowing softly in the mist. Everything here pulses with life, alien, humid, otherworldly life. The landscape looks like someone took a coral reef, a swamp, and a hallucination, and then left them all to grow wild on a jungle planet with no rules. And then you breathe in. The air on Felucia is wet and thick. It clings to your clothes and skin like a second layer. It smells faintly sweet, floral almost, but there's a sour, mouldy edge underneath. You'll learn to tell that smell apart eventually. If it's just flowers, you're fine. If it's rot, something nearby is either dying or hunting. The climate is relentless. It's not just hot, it's steaming. The sun hits the canopy high above you, but it rarely reaches the forest floor directly. Instead, it filters down through glowing spores and massive leaf structures, creating a sort of permanent twilight that throws off your internal clock. You'll forget what time it is, you'll forget what day it is, you'll sweat through your clothes by breakfast and start wondering if anything in your life before Felucia even really happened. It rains too, a lot. Warm, sudden downpours that leave you soaked in seconds. The kind of rain that feels like the planet itself is trying to wash you off. And when it's not raining, It's foggy. Dense clouds of moisture roll through the jungle at all hours. You can't see more than a few meters ahead most of the time, which, to be honest, is kind of a blessing. The less you see, the less you scream, because the flora on Felucia doesn't behave like it should. Some plants glow, some hum, some retract when you look at them, some lean toward you when you aren't looking. There are pods that open and close on their own, vines that pulse like veins, and petals that release clouds of spores that make you dizzy if you breathe them in. You'll try not to touch anything. That will last about a day. Then you'll brush against something by mistake and wind up hallucinating that you're being chased by a 12-meter tall mushroom made of teeth. That one's not real. Probably, but some of them are. The wildlife here makes you wish you'd picked another planet. There are beetles the size of speeder bikes. Some crawl, some fly, some burrow. There are lizards with translucent skin that change colour, like shimmering oil slicks. You'll see birds with glowing wings, six-legged amphibians, and things that defy any clear classification. They'll stare at you with too many eyes, or none. Either way, you'll feel it. Most creatures here don't bother you, as long as you don't threaten them, or smell like blood, or breathe too loud, or run. Running's the worst idea. Running tells Felucia you're prey. And then there are the fungal creatures, walking plants, basically. Strange semi-sentient organisms that emerge from the jungle with soft footsteps and eyeless faces. Some scientists argue they're just aggressive fauna. Others claim they're part of the jungle itself, living off the force. Some of them hum as they move, some just watch. Some don't let you leave once you've seen them. If you're lucky, you'll settle in a small outpost, usually built on elevated platforms to keep away the crawling wildlife. There are no real cities, no suburbs, no infrastructure to speak of. You'll rely on solar panels, basic comms, and whatever food you can pack in with you. The local flora is technically edible, but technically edible doesn't mean pleasant. Everything either tastes like mildew, acid, or flowers soaked in bug spray. Felucians, the native sentient species, are reclusive. They're peaceful if left alone, but they don't take kindly to outsiders meddling with the land. You might see one or two watching you from a distance, their flower-like heads turning slowly. They don't talk much, but they always seem to know when something's wrong. Some say they understand the jungle better than anyone else. Some say they're part of it. And life here is slow, weird, and strangely addictive. You'll spend your days maintaining your outpost, cleaning fungus off your boots, checking your rations for mold, and trying not to get eaten. Nights are worse. The jungle comes alive. You'll hear distant screeches, something brushing against your walls. Sometimes you'll hear whispering, faint, rhythmic, just outside your range of understanding. So, still dreaming of moving to a galaxy far, far away? After travelling across some of the most iconic and frankly exhausting planets the Star Wars universe has to offer, it's time to take a moment and be honest. Maybe Earth isn't that bad. You've stood ankle deep in Dagobah's swamp sludge, brushing off leeches while Yoda offered you some kind of soup made from tree bark and regret. You've tried to live on Geonosis before the Clone Wars, and again during them, and you still can't get the dust out of your ears. You froze your nose off on Hoth, roasted your eyebrows off on Mustafar, and got gently harassed by singing mushrooms on Felucia. You've had bugs in your boots, stormtroopers in your business, and nowhere to charge your datapad, and you survived, barely. But that's the charm of it, right? Each world has its own personality, its own problems. Some are dry and broken, with shattered cities and scarred skies. Others are green and lush, until the wildlife starts hunting you. Some have civilizations long gone, others are still rebuilding, barely hanging on. And you tried to make a life there. Sometimes that meant herding nerfs, sometimes dodging blaster fire, sometimes realizing there isn't a single chair on Mandalore that isn't made of metal or pain.